Okay, so hello everyone, and welcome to another session of the Essentials of Engineering workshop. Today we're going to be talking about environmental engineering, which is a field that plays a very important part in protecting our planet and also improving the quality of life for all things. This is the first session that we're going to have about environmental engineering, where we're just going to be um, talking about what it is and what it basically involves. And then our next session will be on July 8th, where we're going to be talking about the assignment that we will give you guys during this session, and we'll also like answer any questions that you guys might have.
Hello everyone, my name is Saad and today welcome to environmental engineering. So in today's lesson we are going to cover a few basic things about what environmental engineering is, how it impacts our daily lives, and we are going to study about how to conserve water and energy. We will look into how to produce clean energy as well, and we are going to study about how to control pollution, which is a really big issue right now. And something you might have heard of about is a green city. So we are going to go into depth into that and explain what it actually means and all. And there's going to be recycling systems as well. We are going to study each system in detail and understand how it actually works. Then we are going to move on to sustainable design and green infrastructure, which actually means how we can make our cities green and how we could control pollution as a whole. And then it's going to be environmental sensors and data collection, which will tell us about how we can actually understand what is happening to the environment, or what impact our actions are having on the environment. So how can we study that, and how researchers in the lab do that. So that is what we are going to cover today. So I hope that all of you are in for an interesting session. So let us start with the basics. What is environmental engineering? As you can read the slide, it is a branch of engineering focused on protecting human health and the environment by designing systems to control pollution and remove environmental hazards. So, what does that mean? That means that environmental engineering is all about protecting people and the planet. So, we design ways to clean the air, purify water, and manage waste. Like imagine building systems that stop pollutions or prevent floods. And what environmental engineering do? This is the thing. So they study about how we can protect ourselves and the environment from the effects of our actions. Like pollution, for example, let's take pollution. So air pollution air pollution is like a big issue these days. So the air quality index is dropping largely. You would have heard it in the news. So what researchers do in environmental engineering is that they study the composition of the air, they study how we can control that, like if there's a lot of carbon dioxide or methane in the air. So researchers in labs and auditoriums study how we could control that. And that is exactly what environmental engineering is.
So now that we understand what environmental engineering is, and what it involves, we're going to be talking about where it kind of really makes an impact and where we really use it, which is essentially when we manage waste, water, and also when we manage energy as well. By managing these three things, we're able to essentially build a cleaner and safer and also more sustainable world for everyone to live in. And this involves using different strategies, different devices that can essentially help reduce pollution and also protect natural resources that we use. So, kind of the main three components involves obviously waste management, water management, and also clean energy. So waste management is essentially just handling trash and recycling so it doesn't harm the environment. So one of the main ways that we can reduce waste is by recycling paper, recycling plastic as well, and also composting food scraps so we can reduce food waste. Another big part is managing water. This is essentially involving keeping water clean and also being mindful of how we use it. So one thing that environmental engineers would work on would be water treatment plants, which would clean drinking water for us to use. Another way we can manage water, and this is for like any like regular individual, is just being mindful of how we use it, making sure when we aren't using it we turn off the faucet or we reduce how much water we're using when we're like showering or washing our hands and stuff. And then the last part is what is clean energy. This essentially just involves energy that just does not pollute the air or harm the planet. So some examples of just like non-clean energy, so energy that does produce pollution or like produce greenhouse gases would be like fossil fuels. So when factories use petroleum or natural gas or like coal and stuff, those produce pollution or greenhouse gases, which obviously pollute the air around us and harm the planet. So ways that we can reduce that would be using clean energy, which involves using solar panels, wind turbines, or hydropower devices. So, because using non-clean sources contributes significantly to air and water pollution as well as land pollution, it's very important that we understand how we can control it and also reduce the impact that it brings to our planet. So, this kind of goes into pollution control. So, I talked about pollution before as well, but essentially it's just the introduction of harmless substances into the environment, making it dirty and unsafe. So that involves your greenhouse gases, your plastic, any chemicals, um, or just waste that isn't recycled properly. So there are four main types of pollution. Um, the first type we have is air pollution, which involves your dirty gases and smoke that gets released into the air. Some primary examples would be like car exhaust or truck emissions, smoke from factories or power plants, or also any wildfire smoke as well. The next type of pollution is water pollution, which involves chemicals or trash getting into rivers, lakes, or the oceans. So this primarily deals with when you find plastic in the ocean, any pesticides or fertilizers from farms that wash into lakes or rivers, as well as any oil spills that occur in the ocean. Those all contribute to water pollution. Land pollution is essentially kind of the same thing as water pollution, um, except that it obviously involves chemicals or trash ending up on the ground or either in the ground. So, as mentioned before, sometimes near farms, pesticides or any fertilizers may go ahead and soak into the soil, polluting it. Another example would be either just littering or dumping trash into like illegal areas. Those would all be considered examples of land pollution. And then the last example that we have is noise pollution, which is essentially just loud sounds from traffic or construction. So obviously, because pollution is a big part of what harms our planet, it's important that we control it. So pollution control obviously just means finding ways to stop or reduce pollution so it doesn't harm the planet. And there are multiple ways to control pollution, ways that environmental engineers and researchers contribute to it, and also an everyday individual can also contribute to controlling pollution as well. So the primary examples of ways that we can control pollution involves recycling, planting trees, as well as establishing rules and regulations. This especially for like companies or um big like power plants or factories and stuff, so they don't pollute the air as much. And obviously, one of the main things that we're talking about today is environmental engineering, which is where we design and build stuff like filters or water treatment plants to essentially reduce pollution. So, some of the kind of devices that environmental engineers may build or create to reduce pollution involves these three. Obviously, there are like plenty of more, but we're just going to be talking about kind of the three main ones. So the first one are noise barriers. These are essentially just walls or barriers alongside highways or cities or basically areas that have a lot of noise or loud sounds. And essentially engineers create these so they can reduce noise pollution. Another device is carbon capture and storage. This is a type of technology that essentially captures carbon dioxide emissions from factories or power plants and just stores them under the ground so they don't pollute the air. And then we also have air quality monitoring systems, which are devices that measure pollution levels in the air. So essentially, we're aware that if a specific area is safe or unsafe. And we'll talk more about this later on when we're talking about environmental sensors and also collecting data about the environment.
Okay, so now we are going to move on to what makes a city green. I'm sure that you guys would have heard about green cities and all, and how they are the future and all. But do you guys actually know what makes a city green? So, a green city is designed to be healthy for both people and nature. So, like it tries to reduce pollution and use natural resources wisely. It is a city which is clean, smart, and healthy. And what it does is that it uses renewable energy like solar panels, wind turbines, and hydroelectric plants to replace the conventional energy which is made by the burning of coal. And same with the green infrastructure, like parks or green roofs or rain gardens and trees that help cool down the city. So we all know that trees play a really important part in cooling a city or a specific area. So green cities include such infrastructure, which includes a lot of trees to cool down the temperature of that city. Now, public transportation. You would ask, like, why does public transportation make a city green, even though it is emitting pollution? So, what public transport means is that there should be trains or buses which are available to the public for free or at low cost, so that people prefer public transportation instead of using their own vehicles. So, for example, if 100 people use their own car to go to work, if there are like two buses which fit 50 people each, would emit less pollution than those 100 cars. So, if people use those two buses, then there will be less pollution, and that will eventually lead to a green city. Now, another important thing is waste management. For every single city in the world, waste management is compulsory. So recycling and compositing instead of landfills is really, really important. And that is a key to a green city. Same for nature conservation. Now, what does nature conservation mean? Like protecting forests, rivers, and wildlife areas, keeping them out of bounds. For example, if there is a forest, do not cut it down, but protect it in such a way that there's no littering there, and the effects of the humans, like there should be no permission to build a society over it. No commercial areas should be built over that land. Instead, it should be protected, and wildlife should feel safe there. Now, smart water planning. or water and resource planning is like the planning we do in for the future. Now, what does that mean is that we should plan every resources because we know how much resources a city has got, how much quantity of water does the city have underneath its area. So we should plan it accordingly. We should plan how much a person uses every day and plan according to it that how much resources will be required to this year and buy them instead of just drilling down the ground and ruining the nature. Now, a few examples of green cities are Copenhagen, Oslo, or Singapore. You guys might have heard about it. These are the cities with the lowest pollution in the world and also with the highest or the cleanest air in the world as well. So that's it for what makes us city green. I hope you understand. Now, recycling systems. I'm sure all of you guys would have heard about recycling, but have you heard about the recycling systems? There are three major recycling systems in this world. One of them is source separation. Now, what does source separation mean? It is like we sort paper and plastic before throwing it out. You might have seen dustbins with different colors. One is green, one is blue, and like every single one of them is reserved for one kind of material. Like one is reserved for plastic, one is reserved for glass, or one is reserved for paper. So what happens is that the person who is throwing them out sorts it out accordingly, and they are sent to their respective recycling plants where they are turned into another material which can be used later. What about single stream? So in a single stream, all recyclables go in one bin and machines sort them out later. So this is the most used system in the world, single stream. Now, what happens is that the person who is throwing trash or throwing recyclable material throws it into one large bin and it goes to the recycling plant. Machines sort them out. But this is not the most effective way. Why? Because sometimes machines let material, like if they have to differentiate between paper and plastic. Sometimes paper goes into the plastic section and plastic goes into the paper section. This can lead to contamination, and the material formed by recycling of those is not able to be used properly, or it is contaminated with bacteria or something, so it is really dangerous. It's so the single stream recycling system is a really risky one, but it is the most widely used. Why? Because it is easier for people to throw it in just one bin, but it's not the most effective. Now, what is dual stream? So what happens in a dual stream is that we separate it into two different types, like one for paper, one for cardboard, one for plastics and metals and glass. So in this, the products which are made from recycling of these is formed by a mixture of both paper and plastic. Now you would be asking, like, didn't I say the same for single stream? And why does it lead to contamination in single stream and not in dual stream? So in this, it is, like it is looked over by humans, not by machines. And it is developed into a product which includes both without contamination. So these are the three major recycling systems used around the world. Which one is the most effective? If you ask me, it is always going to be the dual stream. But we are right now using the single stream the most. And we really need to switch to single stream separation, to dual stream separation, if we really want to take recycling to the next level.
Okay, so now that we have talked about the different types of recycling systems that help manage waste and keep materials out of landfills and the air, we're going to be talking about sustainable design and green infrastructure, which just takes sustainability a step further, and it involves designing our cities and landscapes to work with nature and really protect it. So essentially, the main idea is just how engineers design systems that work with the environment. So first we have is sustainable design. This just focuses on making buildings and products more eco-friendly, um, as well as focusing on long-term solutions that reduce environmental impact and uses resources efficiently. So some main examples would be um, like houses that use solar panels to generate clean energy. So this using solar panels is an example of sustainable design because they use renewable energy from the sun instead of using fossil fuels, which reduces environmental impact. Because it reduces greenhouse gas emissions, it's able to help fight climate change, and it lowers the home's dependence on non-renewable energy sources like coal or gas. Another example would be green roofs, which essentially just act as natural insulation that keep buildings warmer in the winter and in the summer. And this lowers the need for heating and cooling, which um, is typically used from like HVAC systems. And then the next part we have is green infrastructure, which uses nature or either natural processes to handle environmental problems or challenges, which include flooding, heat, or the main one being pollution. So, as talked about before, this includes green roofs, rain gardens, and also permeable pavements.
Okay, so our next thing is an environmental sensor. Now, what is an environmental sensor? Environmental sensors are devices that help engineers and scientists monitor the environment. So, you guys know about the thermometer. What is it used for? It is used to calculate our temperature, our body temperature. So, environmental sensors are the same thing. Now, they act like our senses, but for things we can't always see or smell. So, what are those things which environmental sensors calculate? So, the sensors can actually measure temperature, humidity. Humidity is like the quantity of water vapors in air, acidity, or like pH as we call it, how acid a fluid is, or like gases, how much the quantity of CO2 or ozone is in the air, or like pollutants which are present in air, water, or even soil. So, what are environmental sensors used for? Now, sensors are used to track water quality in rivers and lakes. They are used to calculate air pollution in cities or calculate the pH or indoor air in buildings. And they are even used in wearables or like those digital watches with sensors and stuff to track exposure to heat or chemicals. Sensors are a key part of smart cities. They send live data to computers, helping us act fast when there's a problem. So now environmental sensors are of two major types, air quality sensors and water quality sensors. Now, what are air quality sensors? They measure gases. Now, what do I mean by measure gases? They measure the quantity of a gas in a river or in our daily air. It can measure the quantity of CO2, ozone, nitrogen, or literally every every particle in air, even dust or pollen or like a pollutant like PM 2.5. And these are sensors which you might have heard about, like purple air sensors, which is widely used in cities and schools to calculate or to measure the pH of air, or like the air quality index, AQI as we call it, in cities and in schools and buildings. Now, what are water quality sensors? They are used to measure pH or turbidity, like the cloudiness of fluids, the temperature, or dissolved oxygen. Now, dissolved oxygen is really important in rivers, especially in fresh lakes and rivers. Now, there needs to be a specific amount of oxygen for sea life to live, and that can be measured in a river or a lake by water quality sensors. They're also used to measure toxins like lead or mercury. Like if we drink that water, it can be fateful. We could literally die from drinking that water. So we need to actually calculate if there's lead or mercury in that water. And who tells us that? Water quality sensors. Now, in last year's Olympics, there was a river Seine in Paris, which was to be used in the Olympics for swimming. But it was at the end, it was decided to not use it. Why? Because there was high levels of pollution. Now, how did they calculate that there was bacteria or there was high level of pollution or like really less dissolved oxygen in that water? How did they use to calculate? They used it by using water quality sensors on that water. So, data collection. The data we receive from environmental sensors is sent to computers, and that is known as data collection, where researchers look at that data and make a decision which can impact our lives. So, what does data collection actually tells us? The data we receive from environmental sensors, what it is actually used for? It is used to actually help detect pollution early. Like, for example, if a lake or river is getting polluted, the data would be sent to researchers or the people who are responsible for that lake or river. So, what happens that they take measures to stop that pollution, to maintain the sea life in that water safe. And it also supports policy and action, not even in waters, also in cities, in the air. So if, for example, like the air quality index reaches a high value, how do we know that? We know it by data collection. And what happens is that the cities takes measures by restricting pollution emitting machines like vehicles or industries and stuff, so that the AQI or the air quality index reaches back to normal and people can live their normal life without any hazard. Same is going to be a no swimming alert at the lake. Exactly what happened with River Seine in the Olympics, because there was a no swimming alert issued there. And how did we know that? We knew it by the help of data collection. So, in short, data collection gives scientists and engineers data to design better solutions and protect not even our lives, but also the nature. So, guys, this is going to be the end of our lesson. And before we go, I want to give you a small assignment. I want you guys to build a water filter using a plastic bottle. So what you guys are going to do is that put some gravel or sand or even charcoal if it's available to you guys, put it at the bottom of the bottle and pour, before pouring water in that, pour some or place uh, a cloth or like a filter It can be a coffee filter or the filter you used in chemical labs. To And so, for just a disclaimer, don't use a cloth which is really thick. Use a cloth which has some pores in it from which water can pass through. So, what you are guys going to do is that you're going to put uh, mud or gravel or like coal in water, then pass it through the cloth or the filter, so that clean water comes down and the gravel, sand, or dust gets trapped by the cloth or the filter you guys are using. So this is a really simple experiment. You could research it on YouTube as well. There are going to be a lot of videos on that. So this is your guys' assignment, and when we meet you guys next time, I hope that all of you guys would have given it a shot. So that is it. I actually see some questions in the chat, so I think we should answer that. So the first question is, what should countries, cities do if they don't have the financial means to create recycling infrastructure? Now, that's a really good question, actually, because not every country has the financial means to develop it. So, what should people do it in that case? Now, this is then the responsibility is to the public of that country or city. Why? Because then we have to switch from recyclable material to biodegradable material. Now, what is biodegradable material? It is a material which you know which can be which can degrade in soil. If you like throw it in soil after 10 years or like 50 years, it would erase, it would be degraded and become a part of soil, just exactly like fossil. So that is biodegradable materials. But the most materials we use in our daily life, like plastic, is not biodegradable. It takes up to 1,000 years to degrade. So in that case, the people should avoid using plastic as much as possible. Use something uh, you could say a cloth or something. Use cloth to make materials. Avoid plastic and paper as much as we can, because if there's no recycling infrastructure, it means that it is going to either end up in water or on soil, and it is not going to be degrade and pose a threat to the life living there. So we should avoid that and use biodegradable material. There are multiple kinds of them. They are a bit expensive for the public. The only reason we use plastic and paper is that because they're cheap, nothing else. If we use biodegradable material for our conventional use, there's going to be no need for recycling, or at least the recycling effect would be reduced by 90% if we use those stuff in our daily life, and the life in water and on soil both would have no hazard from pollution. And someone said that bamboo is good as well for degradation. Yes, it is. If we use, for example, if we use bamboo for like making homes or stuff, it is pretty strong to support those kind of things. It can save us a lot of, pollution. It can save us a lot from pollution, because bricks or the wood we use actually harms the nature. How do bricks harm the nature? Because they are produced by the combustion of fuel and all. They have to burn some things which produces a lot of pollution in the air. So that is one thing. Now, another question was, how does activated charcoal clean water? We're not going to use activated charcoal to clean water. We are going to pour it in the water, it is going to be a component of the water. We are going to pass it through the cloth or the filter, and the charcoal is going to get filtered from the cloth, and the clean water is going to drip down the bottle. So that is what charcoal is. It's not going to be used for clean water.
Yes, and I think there was another question as well, which was how do permeable pavements look like and how do they work? So let me actually pull up a picture of that real quick. Um, right, so essentially what permeable pavements are is it's just like a regular pavement. It's still built with concrete, except essentially the difference is that it has like little gaps or little holes or spaces in between that allows it to basically let water pass through the pavement. And essentially how it works is like typically when you have like rain or just any water flowing down like a river or something, it's gonna hit like the surface or the pavement, and it's just gonna let the water pass like through the holes or the gaps that is on the pavement, and essentially it's gonna go through like granite rocks and any gravel, and it's gonna filter that water and lead it either into a pipe or into a system where companies or just people can use it, if that makes sense. Other than that, does anyone have any other questions?
I just wanted to add something on the biodegradable material. So uh, there's one thing, like you guys must have heard about starch, and so starch is produced by plants, and in every fruit or leaf we eat, there's starch present in it. So starch is a biodegradable material which can degrade because it's produced by nature, and nature reclaims it when it is back on the soil. So scientists have developed a material called bioplastic, which is made from starch. There's a complex chemical composition behind it, but we don't need to get into that. So it is basically made of starch, and it is a kind of plastic. It looks exactly like plastic, and it functions exactly like a plastic, and it does not need to be recycled. If we just throw it in the soil after, and we come back after 5 years or like even 3 years, it would be gone. Where would it be gone? The the soil would have claimed it. The nutrients from the plastic would be nurturing the soil actually, and that might even make the soil fertile because there's a lot of nutrients present in those plastic. So that is one thing we could use if someone doesn't have the financial means for recycling infrastructure. That is a really good alternative for that. So I hope that answers your question. It can't actually replace all the applications of plastic, but it can replace most of the plastic. The problem is that it's creation. Now, there's not a lot of starch because mostly starch is used for like eating to get nutrients for our body. Animals use it, especially the ones who eat leaves and all. So yes, it can be used to replace plastic in most of the applications, but like it's not normal starch. It's like if you guys have heard about what was it called, polylactic acid, PLA. You guys can search it up. Uh, So there are polymers materials based on lignin, which are present in the cork of trees, or uh, the strong area you see of trees. It is present mainly in those. So we can create it in labs artificially, but it's an expensive process and really time consuming. That's the only problem. The research is going on, and maybe in a few years we might see plastic being replaced by it. So yeah, any other questions if anyone has, please to ask.
Okay, so I'm going to assume that there are no more questions. Um, but yeah, so that brings us to the end of today's session of environmental engineering. Thank you everyone for attending and also asking um amazing questions. We loved the engagement that we had, and we hope you found our session informative and also enjoyable. Our next session will be on July 8th, where we'll be kind of diving a little bit more deeper into the assignment that we assigned you guys, and you guys will also have the opportunity to ask us more questions, and we'll get to see the creations that you guys have made. Until then, we look forward to seeing you guys on July 8th. Thank you so much for attending the lesson again.